Owen Marsh was pumping jet fuel in the rain when a pilot walked across the ramp and asked him to fix the helicopter that got him fired. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask what was in it for him. He didn't say one word about the 9 weeks. He wiped his hands on a rag, set the nozzle back in the cradle, and walked into a hangar he had been escorted out of in front of 11 people. 40 minutes later, a 6-year-old girl was in the air. Then he opened the aircraft logbook and signed his name in it. That signature ended a $40 million contract. Stay with me all the way to the end of this one, friend, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story goes. If you believe a person's name is worth something, subscribe. This one's for you. 9 weeks earlier, it was the 3rd of May, and Owen Marsh had been awake since 4 in the morning. Not because of an alarm, because at 4 in the morning, the house was quiet enough to think, and he had needed to think about what was going to happen at 9. He sat at the kitchen table with a coffee going cold in front of him and a green notebook open at his elbow. Not a laptop, not a phone, a green paper notebook, the kind they sell at the drugstore for $2, and there were 19 years of them in a cardboard box in the garage, all of them the same green, all of them full of dates and part numbers and torque values in small square handwriting. The man who taught him to keep them was named Hollis Pike, and he had been dead 2 years. At 6:15, his daughter came down the stairs in her school hoodie with her hair still wet. "You're wearing the work shirt," Nell said. "I'm wearing the work shirt." She stopped at the bottom step. She was 12, and she had her mother's talent for putting an entire argument into one word. "Dad, they're not going to be impressed by a tie, sweetheart. I'd look like a guy who borrowed a tie." He turned the coffee cup a half turn on the table. "This shirt has got my name on it. That's the whole thing I'm going in there to say." Nell crossed the kitchen and stood beside his chair and put her hand flat on the notebook, the way you'd touch a headstone. "Is that the one? That's the one. They're going to say you did it. Probably. And if they don't believe you?" Owen was quiet for a second. Outside, the gutter over the porch was running like a faucet. He had been meaning to get up there since March. "Then we find out what kind of place it is," he said. She kissed the top of his head, which she had started doing about a year ago, and which still took him apart every single time, and she went to catch her bus. He put the notebook in a plastic grocery bag because it was raining, and because he owned exactly one good bag, and it was a gym bag with a broken zipper, and because a man who has been broke long enough stops being embarrassed about staying dry. Here is what actually happened, and it takes about a minute to tell, which is the part that mattered later. On the 3rd of March, Owen Marsh had been the lead airframe and power plant mechanic at Northlight Air Medical for 19 years. That is not a small job. Northlight ran 4 helicopters out of a field on the east side of Whitlock County, and when a truck went off the county road at 2 in the morning, one of those 4 aircraft was the difference between a person and a funeral. On the 3rd of March, Owen found a crack. It was in the tail rotor pitch link on aircraft N412. It was 4/1000ths of an inch. That is thinner than a piece of paper. You cannot see it with your eye. You see it with a light and a loop and 19 years. And even then you see it because you are actually looking, which is the whole job and which almost nobody understands. He wrote it up. He hung the tag. He grounded the aircraft. And he did not sign the return to service. At 9 that night, the director of maintenance came out to the floor. His name was Dale Brunner, and he was 54, and he had been in aviation 26 years, and he was not a bad man. That's important. Nothing in this story works if he's a bad man. "Owen, Dale, talk to me about 412. There's a crack in the pitch link. It's 4 thou. I've got it photographed, and I've got it in the book, and I've got the part on order, and it's 11 days out." Brunner put his hands in his pockets. He looked at the aircraft for a while. "You know about the state contract," he said. "I know about the state contract. Availability has to be 92%. That's the floor. below 92, and it goes to Ridgeline, and Ridgeline flies out of a county away, and their response time on the north end is 19 minutes worse than ours. Bruner said it evenly. He wasn't shouting. He never shouted either. 11 days grounded puts us at 89. I know what it puts us at. There are people on the north end who need those 19 minutes. Dale, Owen turned around. You're about to tell me that putting a cracked pitch link in the air is how we save people on the north end. I'm telling you it's 0.004 of an inch. It was 0.004 of an inch in January. Bruner didn't answer that. I'm not asking you to lie, he said finally. I'm asking you to be reasonable. Those are the same sentence, Dale. You just said the second one slower. That was the entire conversation. Owen would go over it maybe 400 times in the next 9 weeks, looking for the place where he could have said something better, and he never found it, and that was its own kind of hard. He clocked out at 10:15. At 10:40, his daughter woke him up, standing in his bedroom door, not making any sound at all, which is what an asthma attack looks like when it's bad, and he had her in the truck in 90 seconds, and at Whitlock County General by 11:02, and he sat in a plastic chair in that waiting room until 4 in the morning, with her inhaler in his fist and her jacket across his knees. And at 11:40 that night, according to the aircraft logbook, Owen Marsh signed N412 back into service. Nobody asked him about that for 9 weeks. The hearing was not a hearing. That was the first thing. He walked in at 9 and there was no room set up and no table, and nobody with a folder of his own. There was the hangar floor, and there was N412 sitting on the mats with its cowlings off, and there were 11 people standing around it holding tools and pretending to be busy. They did it on the floor on purpose. He understood that before anybody said anything. You do it in an office when you want it handled. You do it on the floor when you want it seen. Adrienne Kessler came out of the side door at 4 minutes past 9. She was smaller than people expected. That was the first thing everybody said about her. The second thing was that she moved through a room like weather. She didn't hurry, and she didn't slow down, and people just weren't in her way by the time she got there. She was 48 years old, and she had bought Northlight out of a bankruptcy 11 years back, with money that was not hers yet, and she had turned 4 broken helicopters into a company that got called when the roads were gone. She had a folder in her hand. It was a thin folder. Mr. Marsh, ma'am, you know why we're standing here. I know what I've been told. On March 3rd, you grounded 412 for a cracked pitch link. That's in the book in your handwriting. She opened the folder. She read it, which meant she needed to read it, which meant she had not read it before. At 11:40 that same night, you signed it back into service without the part being replaced. That's also in the book. It's also your signature and your certificate number. The hangar was very quiet. Somebody's air hose ticked as it depressurized. No, ma'am, Owen said. No, what? No, I didn't sign that. Your certificate number is on it. Yes, ma'am, it is. She looked up. Mr. Marsh, I'd like you to think carefully about the next thing you say. I've had 9 weeks to think about it, and I only found out yesterday. So I've had 1 day, and I've used all of it. He put his hands at his sides so they'd be still. On the night of March 3rd, I was at Whitlock County General with my daughter. She came into my room at 10:40, not breathing right. I had her at the emergency entrance at 11:02. We got discharged at 4 in the morning. There's a wristband in a drawer at my house, and there's a bill on my counter that I'm still paying, and there is a nurse whose name I don't know, but whose face I could pick out of anything. He kept his voice down. He wasn't performing. That was the part that came back to him later, that at every single point, right up to the end of the whole thing, he never once raised his voice. You can call them right now, he said. The number's on a magnet on my fridge, and I know it by heart. It's 4 seconds. Adrienne Kessler looked at him for 2 full seconds. And then she said the sentence that ended her career, though nobody in that hangar knew it yet, including her, and it was 4 words long. I don't need to. Owen didn't move. Ma'am, I have a maintenance record with your name on it. She closed the folder. I have a director of maintenance with 26 years telling me you came to him upset about the schedule. You signed it, and then you thought better of it. And I have an aircraft that flew 19 missions on a part you tagged as cracked. It didn't fly on a cracked part. You just said, I said I tagged it. Somebody swapped that link on March 4th and never wrote it up because writing it up means writing down why. Owen took one breath. Ma'am, ask me where the old part is. Nobody's asked me that. Not one person. Where is it? I don't know. Because I got walked off the property Tuesday and my toolbox got rolled out behind me. Something moved in her face. Not doubt. Calculation. Owen had seen that exact look on a foreman's face one time, years back, right before the man decided the cheapest fix was to fire somebody. Your employment is terminated effective now for falsification of a maintenance record, Adrian Kessler said. We're referring it to the FAA this morning. That last part was the part that mattered, and everybody standing there knew it. Getting fired costs you a job. A referral costs you your certificate. Your certificate is the thing they give you after 2 years of school and 18 months of somebody watching your hands. And if they take it, you are 41 years old and you have 19 years of experience doing the one thing you are no longer permitted to do anywhere in the United States for the rest of your life. Yes, ma'am, Owen said. She had already turned around. He picked up the plastic grocery bag with the green notebook in it. He did not say, I told you so, because there was nobody to say it to yet. He would not say it later either, when there was. 2 of the guys he had trained looked at the floor. Kyle Deitz, who was 24 and had been there 10 months and who Owen had taught to safety wire on a coffee break, looked right at him and opened his mouth and didn't get anything out. Kyle, Owen said, torque the number 3 cowl latch. It's been backing off since February. Nobody's going to notice till it's gone. Then he walked out. Here's the part nobody saw. At the back of the hangar, there was a woman named Priya Raman, 29, HR coordinator, standing with a laptop balanced on a parts cart because there was nowhere to sit. Her job that morning was to type what was said. She typed what was said, all of it, including one line. Employee states he was at Whitlock County General Hospital with his daughter from approximately 10:40 p.m. to 4 a.m. on March 3rd. States Hospital can confirm. Dale Bruner read it over her shoulder on the way past. That's not relevant, he said. Take that out. It's what he said. It's an unverified assertion in a termination record, and it creates exposure. Take it out. She took it out. Then she saved the version with it into a folder on her own drive called Drafts. And she could not have told you why. And she thought about it every single day for 9 weeks. 9 weeks is not a long time unless you are living in it. Owen sold the good tool chest. He kept the blue one, the small one with HP, stamped into the lid with a letter punch, because it had been Hollis Pike's, and because you can be broke without being empty. He wrote 11 letters to the FAA case number. He kept copies. He called the regional office 3 times and left his name and his certificate number, and the reason, and nobody called back. And that is not a conspiracy. That is just how a queue works. And knowing that did not help. He took a job pumping jet fuel on the same field. He took it because it was the only job left on that airport he could legally hold with an open enforcement case against his certificate. He took it because it paid $14 an hour, and the mortgage did not care what a man used to be. And he took it because the fuel island was 40 feet from the Northlight hangar door, and because a man who has been broke long enough stops being proud about which direction he has to face. Every night at 7, the hangar lights came on across the ramp, and every night at 7, Owen Marsh did not look at them, and that took work, and he did it anyway. On a Sunday in the middle of it, Nell found the blue toolbox in the garage. She was looking for a bicycle pump. She opened the lid and stopped because taped inside the lid, gone soft and brown at the corners, was a business card. Ruth Cardoza, aviation law, a phone number, nothing else. Dad, who's Ruth Cardoza? Owen came and looked at it for a second, like it was a photograph of somebody he used to know. That's Hollis's, he said. Hollis with the notebooks. Hollis with the notebooks. He sat down on an upturned bucket. Hollis Pike taught me for 18 months, and then he worked next to me for 17 years. He was the meanest patient man I ever met in my life. He used to make me write down every single thing I did on an aircraft, even the stuff nobody asks about, even the stuff there's no line for. I asked him why once. What did he say? He said, because the day somebody says you did a thing you didn't do, you're not going to be able to remember what you had for breakfast, let alone what you did on a Tuesday in March. Nell looked at the card. Why do you have her number? He gave it to me the year he got sick. He said, if they ever come for your ticket, you call her. Owen took the card and pressed the tape back down with his thumb. And then he said, not before. So, call her. They've already come for it, sweetheart. So, why haven't you called her? Owen closed the lid. Because I don't have anything to give her, he said. I've got my word. That's all I've got. And my word's the exact thing they've decided isn't worth anything. He put the toolbox back on the shelf. He would call Ruth Cardoza 41 days later at 3:40 in the morning from a fuel office with a metal desk, and by then he would have something to give her, and he would not know it. The storm came in on the 9th of July, and it did not behave like the ones before it. By 11 that night, there were 2 feet of water over the low bridge at Kessler Creek, and the county road on the north end was gone in 3 places. The sheriff's department had a boat in the water on Dunmore Road, which is not something that happens. At 11:02, a 6-year-old named Sadie Boone fell off a hay ladder in her grandfather's barn. She fell about 9 feet. She got up. She talked. She was fine for about 20 minutes, which is the thing about a head injury that nobody knows until it happens to them. And then she was not fine, and her grandfather was on the phone with a dispatcher describing what her eyes were doing. Whitlock County General could stabilize her. Whitlock County General could not do pediatric neurosurgery because Whitlock County General is a 54-bed hospital in a county with 11,000 people in it. The nearest place that could was 130 miles southeast. Ground ambulance was 3 hours in good weather. In that weather, it was 3 hours if the road held, and the road was not holding, and everybody on that call knew it. There was 1 helicopter on the field that night. Northlight had 4 aircraft. 1 was in a heavy inspection in a hangar 3 states away. 1 was down for an engine change that Owen had scheduled back in April, and that had gone 11 days long the way engine changes do. 1 was on a transfer out of Ridgeline and would not be back until morning. That left N412. At 11:09, Captain Gene Aldrich started the number 1 engine on N412, and 11 seconds into the spool up, a small amber light came on in front of him that said, Chip MGB. He shut it down. A chip light on a main gearbox means that a magnetic plug down inside the transmission has picked up metal. The plug is a magnet. It sits in the oil. Its entire job is to catch whatever comes off the gears, and when enough comes off, it closes a circuit and turns on a light in the cockpit. There is exactly 1 correct response to a chip light, and that response is to land or not take off. And Gene Aldrich had been flying for 31 years, and he did the correct thing without thinking about it. Then he sat there in the dark with the rotors winding down and did the math. Kyle Deitz came out with a flashlight. He was 24 years old. He had 10 months on the job. He was a good kid, and he was going to be a good mechanic in about 4 years, and he was, that night, the only mechanic on that field. Chip light, Aldrich said. Main box. Okay. Kyle's flashlight was already moving. Okay, so we pull the plug and we look at it. You can pull the plug. Yeah. And then what? Kyle stopped. Because here's the thing about a chip light. You pull the plug and you look at what's on it. And what's on it is either fuzz or it's chips. Fuzz is normal. Fuzz is a gearbox, wearing the way gearboxes are supposed to wear. Gray felt, dust, nothing. Chips are pieces. Chips means something inside that box is coming apart. And if it comes apart in the air, the rotor stops, and there is no such thing as gliding a helicopter down from that. They look the same on a flashlight. Telling them apart is a judgment. It is a judgment a mechanic makes with a light and a loop and his own name. And when he makes it, he signs the book. And if he is wrong, 4 people die. Kyle Deitz was 10 months out of school. He could not make that call, and he should not have made that call. And he knew both of those things, which was already the sign of a better mechanic than the man about to be involved. "I can't clear that," he said. "Gene, I can't clear that. I know you can't. Dale's 90 minutes out. He's at his sister's in Everton, and the bridge is out. Yeah, there's a contract guy in Marysville, 90 minutes the other way." They stood in the rain doing nothing for about 4 seconds, which was the longest 4 seconds either of them ever spent. Then Tori Vance said it. She was 34, and she was the flight nurse, and she had already loaded the pediatric kit, and she was standing in the doorway with the light behind her. "Gene," she said, "there's a guy pumping gas 40 feet from here who did this exact job for 19 years. Nobody said anything. "I'm just going to say it out loud one time," Tori said, "because if that kid dies tonight, I want to have said it out loud one time." Gene Aldrich looked across the ramp at the fuel island. The light was on in the little office. There was a truck parked beside it with a placard on the side, and there was a man in a wet jacket coiling a grounding cable, doing it the slow, careful way people do a thing they have done 10,000 times. Aldrich was 58 years old. He had flown 2 tours and 31 years of civilian rotorcraft, and he had never once in his life been comfortable with a company politics conversation. He walked across that ramp in the rain, and he did not rehearse anything. Owen looked up. "Captain, Mr. Marsh, you need fuel because I've got you at 1184 and I logged it. I don't need fuel." Owen finished coiling the cable and hung it on the hook. Then he stood there. Aldrich did not apologize, and he did not explain, and he did not soften it. And afterward, Owen would say that was the only reason he said yes. "There's a 6-year-old girl on the north end of this county with a bleed in her head," Aldrich said. "The roads are gone. I'm the only way she gets to a surgeon tonight. My aircraft has a chip light on the main gearbox, and my mechanic is 24 years old, and he's right that he can't clear it." He wiped rain off his face with the back of his hand. "I'm not going to insult you by pretending this is fair. It's not fair. No, you know what they did to me. I was standing in that hangar," Aldrich said. "I was 11 feet away." Owen looked at the ground for a second. Later on, a great many people would ask him what he was thinking about in that second, and reporters would write that he was weighing it, and one magazine would put it that he was wrestling with the temptation to walk away, and none of that was true. He was not weighing anything. He was thinking that his coveralls were in the truck, and that his loop was in the blue toolbox in the garage at home, and that he was going to have to do this with a borrowed one. "Okay," he said. That was it. That was the whole yes. He set the fuel nozzle in the cradle, and he walked. Gene Aldrich did one more thing before Owen touched that aircraft, and it was the thing that saved everybody. He called dispatch on a recorded line, and he had them patch Dale Brunner. "Dale, it's Aldrich. I've got a chip light on the main box on 412. I've got a PED's head bleed on the north end and no road, and I've got no qualified mechanic on this field." The line crackled. Brunner's voice came through flat and immediate. "Then it doesn't fly. I have Owen Marsh 40 feet from me. Absolutely not. Dale, under no circumstances does that man touch that aircraft. He's terminated. He's under an open enforcement action, and if he signs anything, the entire company is... What's the alternative?" Pause. "I'm asking you for an alternative, Dale. On this line. Give me one, and I'll take it." Pause. "I'm 90 minutes out. That's not an alternative. That's a location. Give me an alternative. The pause went longer. I'm asking a third time, Aldrich said. And I'm asking it slow, because this is a recorded line, and I want it recorded 3 times. Do you have any way to get a qualified mechanic to this aircraft in the next 30 minutes? No, Dale Brunner said. Thank you. Aldrich hung up. Then he took a fuel ticket off the clipboard on the wall and turned it over and wrote 9 words on the back of it in ballpoint pen. O. Marsh engaged as contract A and P by PIC, $1. He signed it. He dated it. He wrote the time, which was 11:26. I'm not having anybody say later that you were a bystander who wandered in, he said. He dug in his flight suit pocket and came out with a dollar bill, folded small, and he put it in Owen's hand. You're hired. It's a real contract. It's ugly and it'll get argued about, but it's real. Owen looked at the dollar. Somebody note the time, Aldrich said to the room. Tori Vance wrote 11:26 p.m. on the back of her glove in marker, and she still has the glove. The repair took 34 minutes, and almost nobody in that hangar breathed for any of it. Owen borrowed Kyle's loop. He borrowed Kyle's gloves because his own hands smelled like Jet A, and you do not put Jet A near a gearbox. He asked for the aircraft records before he touched a bolt, which is the correct order and which almost nobody does, and Kyle brought him the book and set it on the workstand, and Owen did not open it yet. He drained the sample. He pulled the plug. Then he did a thing that made a 24-year-old kid a better mechanic for the rest of his life. He did not go off alone with it. He carried it to the bench under the work light, and he said, Kyle, come here, put your eye on this. I already told Gene I can't. I know you can't. That's not what this is. Come here. Kyle came. What do you see? Metal. Everybody sees metal. Look again. Kyle looked. Owen turned the plug slowly under the light. Fuzz is a fur, Owen said. It lays down. It's the box wearing the way the box is supposed to wear. And if you never saw fuzz on one of these, you'd have a different problem, because that'd mean nothing's touching anything. Chips are pieces. Chips have got an edge on them, and they stand up off the magnet, and they catch the light in one spot instead of all over. He held it steady. You're looking for an edge. That's it. That's the whole thing. Everything else in this job you can learn in a year. Kyle looked for a long time. It's fur, he said. Say it like you mean it. It's fuzz. There's no chip on that. There's no edge on any of it. That's right. Owen set the plug down. Now you've seen one, and you'll see the next one in about 4 years, and you'll know. He cleaned the plug, and he inspected the screen, and he checked the oil sample against a card, and he reinstalled the plug and torqued it and safety wired it. He wiped the seal seat twice. Then he had Kyle do a ground run, and he stood outside in the rain with his hand flat on the cowling, like a man with his palm on somebody's chest, and he watched the temperatures, and the light did not come back on. Then he shut it down, and he walked to the workstand, and he picked up the aircraft logbook. And here is where the whole thing turns, and it turns on nothing. It turns on a man not doing something. That logbook had been out of his hands for 9 weeks. It was company property. It lived in the aircraft. Being fired had meant, among 100 other things, that Owen Marsh was never going to touch that book again in his life. 11 pages back in that book was an entry dated March 3rd at 11:40 at night, signed with his name and his certificate number that he did not write. He knew exactly where it was. He could have found it with his thumb. He did not turn back 11 pages. He turned to the first clean line at the front of the open section, and he wrote it out the way Hollis Pike taught him to write things out, which was plainly and completely and with nothing left for somebody to guess at. 7/9, 2337, chip light illuminated, MGB, removed and inspected MGB chip detector and screen. Indications consistent with normal wear, no chip, no edges present under, 10 times. Cleaned and reinstalled detector, torqued and safetied. Oil sample taken and retained, bagged and tagged in parts crib. Ground run 12 minutes, temps and pressures normal, no recurrence. Aircraft returned to service. O Marsh A and P 314-0977. Then he closed the book. Then he put it back on the shelf where it came from. Gene Aldrich was standing 8 feet away, and he watched all of it, and he understood exactly what he had just watched, and he did not say a word about it until a hearing 14 months later, at which point he said it under oath, and a room full of people went very quiet. Wheels up at 12:41 in the morning. Write it however you want. The truth is, it was just rain and noise. The rotor wash came off the wet concrete in a sheet, and the lights went up over the tree line and turned southeast and got small, and then were gone, and 11 people stood in a hangar doorway, not saying anything at all. Then Owen Marsh walked back across the ramp and finished his shift. That is the part that everybody who tells this story leaves out, and it is the most important part in it. He did not stand there. He did not wait for anybody to thank him. He went back to the fuel island, and he pumped 140 gallons into a King Air at 1:15, and he fueled a Cessna at 4:50, and he logged both of them, because that was the job he had, and it was still his shift. At 3:40 in the morning, he sat in the fuel office at a metal desk under a light that buzzed, and he took out his wallet. Behind a school photograph of Nell, there was a laminated card that said AR frame and power plant, and behind that there was a business card gone soft and brown at the corners. He looked at it for a while. Then he picked up the phone on the desk because his cell had 11%, and this was not a call to run out of battery on, and he dialed. It rang 6 times. Cardoza. Ma'am, my name's Owen Marsh. It's 3:40 in the morning. Yes, ma'am. Who gave you this number? Hollis Pike. The line went quiet in a way that phone lines don't usually go. Hollis Pike gave you my card, Ruth Cardoza said, and you're calling me at 3:40 in the morning. He gave it to me 2 years ago. He said don't call until they come for my ticket. And have they? Yes, ma'am. 9 weeks ago. Then you're 9 weeks late, she said, and I'm going to put on coffee, and you're going to tell me the whole thing in the order it happened. And don't be interesting about it, he told her. She stopped him twice. The first time was at the hospital, 10:40 at night on March 3rd. Yes, ma'am. And the entry is 11:40. Yes, ma'am. Did you tell them that? I told the CEO that standing in front of 11 people. I said the hospital could confirm it in 4 seconds. And what did she say? She said she didn't need to. Ruth Cardoza did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Keep going," in a completely different voice. The second time she stopped him was at the logbook. Wait, ma'am, go back. You did what? I signed the book. I had to. Legally, I had to. You can't return an aircraft to service without an entry. That's the whole... I know what it is. He heard a chair move. Owen, I want you to say the next part very slowly. You put your signature in the aircraft maintenance record for N412. Yes, ma'am. The same book. Ma'am, there's only one book. The same book that has the March 3rd entry in it. Yes, ma'am. 11 pages back. There was a sound on the line, like somebody standing up. Did you photograph it? No, ma'am. The pause went on so long, he checked the handset. Why not? Ruth Cardoza said. Because it's not mine. Another pause. Say that again. It's not my book. It's company property. It lives in the aircraft. Captain Aldrich hired me to clear a chip light, and I cleared the chip light, and I wrote up what I did, and that's the whole thing I was there for. Owen rubbed his eyes. Ma'am, if I'd photographed that page, then every single thing I did tonight becomes the reason I was there. And it wasn't. Ruth Cardoza was quiet for about 4 seconds. Mr. Marsh, she said, I have been doing this 31 years, 11 of them for the FAA on the enforcement side, and I want you to understand what you have done tonight. Because you, clearly, do not. Yes, ma'am. An entry in an aircraft maintenance record is a federal document. Falsifying one is not a personnel matter, and it is not a dispute, and it is not a he said. It carries revocation of every certificate the person holds, permanently, and it carries criminal exposure, and it is the single thing in this industry that nobody survives. I know that. That's what they've got me for. That's what they had you for. Listen to me. Her voice came down the line, hard and even. For 9 weeks, the only copy of the evidence against you has been sitting inside an aircraft owned by the people accusing you. I could not get near it. I'd have subpoenaed it, and they'd have fought it for a year, and by then, your certificate is revoked by default because you don't get to fly on hope. Okay. As of tonight, there is a maintenance record with 2 entries signed Owen Marsh, 9 weeks apart, in the same book, and you wrote one of them in front of a captain and a flight nurse and a hangar full of people, and the other one was written while you were in a waiting room at Whitlock County General with a 12-year-old on a nebulizer. She let that sit exactly 1 second. Nobody has to break into anything. Nobody has to steal anything. A first-year examiner can put those 2 pages side by side, and it's over. Owen sat there. And there's more, Ruth said. An unscheduled maintenance action on a night flight, on an aircraft that is already inside an open enforcement file, gets pulled. Not maybe, always. That book is going to be read by a federal inspector within about 6 days, no matter what anybody wants. I didn't do that on purpose. I know you didn't. That's the part that's going to be impossible for them. She laughed once, and there was nothing funny in it. You didn't take anything, Mr. Marsh. You didn't have to. You just put your name next to his, and now it's federal. Now, Ruth Cardoza said, here's what I don't have, ma'am. I've got 2 signatures. That gets me to somebody forged it. It does not get me to Dale Bruner forged it. And until it does, their lawyer stands up and says, maybe Marsh had a friend do it for him, and a hearing officer might buy that, because hearing officers buy stranger things at 4 o'clock on a Friday. Paper moved on her end. I need 3 things before 9 this morning, and I need all 3, because 2 of them is a story, and 3 of them is a case. Tell me. 1, the hospital record, time-stamped arrival on March 3rd. That kills the entry outright. I need you to authorize a release, and I need you to do it now, over this line, with me recording, and then I'm going to drive to Whitlock and stand in medical records when they unlock the door at 7. Yes, ma'am. 2, somebody typed what you said in that hangar. Every company types it. It's a termination record, and it's required. And your line about the hospital is not in the version I'd get in Discovery, or they wouldn't have gone to the FAA with it. She said it flatly, which means somebody took it out, which means somebody was told to take it out, which means there's a person who has been carrying that around since May. I don't know who that is. Neither do I. That one has to come to us. And 3? 3 is the one that matters. Ruth's voice changed. 2 signatures says a forgery happened. The hospital says it wasn't you. Neither one puts Dale Brunner in a room with a book at 11:30 at night. For that, I need a human being who saw him. There was nobody there at 11:30. There was one person there, Ruth said. Booker Hale. Owen sat up. Booker worked the parts desk. Booker Hale worked the parts crib at Northlight for 22 years, and the records room shares a wall with it. And Booker Hale was let go 2 weeks after March 3rd in a staff reduction that reduced exactly 1 person. She let that sit. I've had his name on a legal pad since April, and I never had a reason good enough to knock on his door. So knock on it. He doesn't open it. He's 74. He's got no phone. It's been shut off since last summer. He's got bad knees, and it takes him about a minute to get to the door. And if you knock twice and walk off, he'll think you're a bill collector, and he won't answer it again for a week. Then somebody has to stand there. Somebody has to stand there, Ruth agreed. And I'm 40 minutes out, and I have to be at that hospital at 7, and I can't be in 2 places. Owen looked at the clock on the fuel office wall. It said 3:58. I'm on shift till 6, he said. And if I walk off this field, I lose the job, and if I lose the job, I lose the truck in about 5 weeks. I know. And if I show up at 74-year-old man's door at 7 in the morning as the guy from the news, you're not on the news yet. You will be by 9, Ruth exhaled. Owen, who's closer? He stood in a fuel office with a buzzing light, and he did not want to say it. He thought about a 12-year-old asleep in a house 4 miles away with a school bag by the door. He thought about her mother, 3 years gone, who used to say that the fastest way to make a kid useless is to protect her from every single thing. And he thought about what Hollis would say, and what Hollis would say was, she's a person, Owen. She's not a project. You don't get to decide for her. My daughter, he said. How old? 12. Owen. She's 12 and done Moore's 2 stops on the 9 bus, and she's ridden it by herself since she was 10. His throat closed and he made it open again. And you're going to talk to her yourself, and you're going to tell her she can say no, and you're going to tell her nobody will ever mention it again if she does. Those are the words. Say those exact words. I'll say those words. Ma'am. He shut his eyes. Don't let her walk up to a house alone if there's a car sitting outside it. There won't be. There was. At 6:50 in the morning, Adrienne Kessler's phone rang, and it was the county public information officer, and the first thing out of his mouth was that a 6-year-old was out of surgery and stable, and that there were 3 news trucks on the airport access road. She was in the car in 11 minutes. She was wearing a good coat, and she was already half a sentence into a statement in her head. And the sentence was about her people, and she meant it. And that is exactly what made the next 4 minutes as bad as they were. She came in through the side door at 7:15. The hangar smelled like rain and hot metal. Somebody had left a work stand out. The night crew had not gone home, which she noticed and did not understand yet. And Tori Vance was sitting on a tire with her flight suit half unzipped and her hands hanging between her knees. And Gene Aldrich was standing at the coffee machine holding a cup he had not drunk any of. Adrienne Kessler stopped in the middle of that floor, and she smiled, and it was a real smile, and there was nothing wrong with it. Okay, she said. First, Sadie Boone is out of surgery. She's going to be fine. They said 40 more minutes, and it's a different conversation. Somebody let out a breath. I've got 3 trucks outside, and I'm going to go talk to them, and I'm going to say the true thing, which is that my people put an aircraft in the air in the worst weather in 11 years. She was already turning toward the door. Who fixed that helicopter? I want to shake his hand before I go out there. And the hangar went quiet. Not awkward quiet. Not somebody coughed quiet. It went quiet the way a room goes when everybody in it realizes at the same instant that they are about to watch something. Kyle Deitz looked at the floor. Tori Vance did not. Gene Aldrich set the coffee cup down on the machine, and the sound of the paper cup touching the metal was enormous. You fired him, Aldrich said. Adrienne Kessler's face did not change, because she had not understood yet. There is about a second and a half in that kind of moment, where a person is still on the other side of it. I'm sorry? Owen Marsh. Aldrich turned around. He was on the fuel truck. He was on the fuel truck all night, 40 feet out that door, because it's the only job on this field he's allowed to hold while your referral sits in a queue in Oklahoma City. I walked out there at 11:22 in the morning and asked him, and he said, okay. And he came in at 11:26, and he pulled the chip detector and put my kid mechanic's eye on it and taught him what he was looking at while he did it. And he cleared it and ground ran it and signed the book. That's not... He signed it, Adrienne, legally. His certificate is current because you've referred him. You haven't revoked him. And there's a difference. And that difference is the only reason that child is alive. Aldrich's voice never came up. And then he went back outside and fueled a King Air at 1:15 and a Cessna at 4:50 because it was still his shift. Adrienne Kessler stood absolutely still. I hired him, Aldrich said, on a recorded line, After I asked Dale Bruner 3 separate times to give me any alternative, and he could not. I paid him $1, and I wrote it on the back of a fuel ticket, and it's in my flight bag. And I'd do it again in front of anybody you want to put in a room. And then Tori Vance said the sentence. She had been awake for 22 hours. She said it to nobody in particular, looking at the floor between her boots, in the flat, wrung-out voice of a person with nothing left to manage. He never once said I told you so, she said. Not one time. Not when Jean asked him. Not while he was doing it. Not when it worked. I was standing right there for all of it, and I kept waiting for him to say it, and he never did. Somebody's phone was already up. It was up because there were news trucks outside, and because everybody's phone is always up now. It caught 11 seconds of it, badly, at an angle, from behind a workstand. 400,000 people watched it by noon. 22 floors is a figure of speech. Northlight's offices were on the 2nd floor over the hangar, and you got there on a set of steel stairs that rang when you walked up them. Dale Bruner was up there at 7:40 with the door shut, and the aircraft logbook for N412 open flat on the desk in front of him, and his hands were not steady. He had driven 90 minutes on a flooded road in the dark to get there. He had gone to the aircraft first, before the office, before anybody saw him, and he had taken the book off the shelf. He turned to the last entry, July 9th, 2337, chip light illuminated, MGB, small square handwriting, every line filled, nothing left to guess at, oil sample bagged and tagged and retained, which nobody does, which Hollis Pike had made a 22-year-old kid do 400 times until it stopped being a decision. O. Marsh, A and P, 314, 0977. Then Dale Bruner turned back 11 pages, 3/3, 2340. Pitch link inspected, no defect found. Aircraft returned to service. O. Marsh, A and P, 314, 0977. He put his thumb on one and his finger on the other, and he held them apart, and he looked at the 2 signatures. They were not close. They were not even in the same family. He had written the March one fast, standing up at 11:30 at night, from memory, off a signature he had seen 10,000 times, and had therefore never once actually looked at. He had always known they weren't close. That was the thing. He had known it that night, and he had known it every day since, and he had made peace with it in the only way available to him, which was the arithmetic that the one man alive who could hold the 2 pages up next to each other had been walked out of the building and would never touch that book again. That arithmetic had been correct for 128 days. Dale Bruner had done one dishonest thing in 26 years. It had taken 11 seconds, and it had held a contract worth $40 million. And every single thing he had done since, the summary he wrote, the sentence he told Adrian in the elevator, the line he made a 29-year-old girl delete out of a document, the way he stopped going out on the floor, every one of those had been to protect 11 seconds. There was a knock. What? Priya Raman opened the door 6 inches. Mr. Bruner, legal's asking for the... I said what? I didn't say come in. She stopped. He heard himself. He put both hands flat on the desk. Priya, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And that scared her worse than the shouting did, because Dale Bruner had never yelled at her in 19 months, and he had also never once apologized for anything. And a man doing both inside of 4 seconds is a man who has stopped being able to hold the shape. She went back to her desk. She sat there with her hands in her lap. Then she opened a folder on her drive called Drafts, and she looked at a document she had saved on the 3rd of May, and there was one line in it, and she read the line about 9 times. At 9:02 that morning, a 12-year-old girl in a school hoodie got off the number 9 bus at the corner of Dunmore and 5th and walked a block and a half in the wet. Ruth Cardoza had said the words on the phone at 4:30 in the morning, all of them, exactly as instructed. You can say no. Nobody will ever mention it again. Your father was extremely specific about that. Nell had listened to the whole thing and then said, "What's his name again?" The house was small and yellow, and the paint was going. On the north side, there was a boat trailer in the side yard with no boat on it. There was a wheelchair ramp somebody had built themselves, plywood, done well, and there was a black car in the driveway with the engine running. Nell stopped on the sidewalk. 2 men were on the porch. One was maybe 40 and had a good face, the kind of face that gets sent to do this, and he was holding a folder and standing back from the door, the polite distance. "Not asking you to sign anything today, Mr. Hale," he was saying through the door. "This is a courtesy. We're just closing out some old file questions." "Then why'd you bring a pen?" said a voice from inside. Nell almost laughed out loud. The man turned around and saw a 12-year-old standing on the sidewalk in the rain. "Hi, sweetheart. You lost?" "No, sir." She walked past him up the ramp because a ramp is not a step and nobody expects you to use it. And she stood at the door and she did not knock twice. She knocked once and she waited. She counted in her head. At 61 seconds, she heard a footrest come down inside. At about 75, she heard the walker. The door opened on a chain. Booker Hale was 74, and he was in a cardigan with a mug in his hand, and one eye at the gap. And behind him, the television was on with the sound off. "My name's Nell Marsh," she said. "I'm Owen's daughter." The house went completely silent. Then the chain came off. "Sir," the man with the good face said, taking a step. "I don't think that's—" "You," Booker Hale said, "have been standing on my porch for 11 minutes, telling me you're not asking for anything. That girl's been here 90 seconds, and she's already told me what she wants and who she is. Get off my ramp." He got the door shut. He got it locked. He stood there breathing for a second, with his hand still on the bolt. Then he turned around and looked at her, and his face came apart, just a little, at one corner. "Lord," he said, "you got Sarah's mouth on you. That's what people say. Sit down." "I don't have time to sit down, sir. There's a lawyer 40 minutes out, and—" "Girl, I'm 74 years old and I've got a bad hip and a mug of coffee, and you're going to sit down because I have been waiting 2 years for somebody to knock on that door, and I would like about 9 seconds to enjoy it." She sat down. Booker Hale sat down across from her very slowly, one hand on the arm of the chair the whole way. "They came around 3 times, he said. "Different fellas. Real nice. Wanted to know if I remembered anything about March. I told them the truth, which is that I don't remember one thing about March." He looked up. "Nobody ever once asked me about the 3rd of March at 11:30 at night." Nell went completely still. "You have to ask the right question," Booker said. "That's the whole trick. And it ain't a trick, it's just that nobody does it. Mr. Hale, what happened on March 3rd at 11:30 at night?" He put the mug down. "I was on the parts desk. Second shift ran till midnight back then. Records room shares a wall with the crib, and there's one door, and it comes out by my counter, and it squeaks." He said it plainly, the way you read a part number off a shelf. At about 11:30, Dale Bruner came out of that records room with an aircraft book under his arm. Nobody's in that room at 11:30. In 22 years, I never once saw a man in that room at 11:30. Did he say anything? "I said good evening, Dale. 22 years I said good evening to that man." Booker Hale's jaw worked, and he didn't answer me, walked right past, and I stood there and I thought, well, that's odd. "Did you tell anybody?" "I told my wife." The room got quiet. She was the only one I ever told, and I told her that same night when I got home, and she said, "Booker, you write that down." And I said, "Write what down? Lorraine." The man walked through a door. He looked at his hands. And 2 weeks later, they let me go. Staff reduction. Reduced exactly 1 fella. Nell didn't say anything. "And Lorraine passed in October," Booker Hale said. "So, For about 8 months, I have been the only person alive who knows a thing that matters. And I got no phone, and I got no family left, and I ain't stupid. I know why they keep coming up my ramp. And in 8 months, not one person came here and asked me the actual question. He looked at her. Nobody came, he said. I came, Nell said. Ruth Cardoza's car came up Dunmore Street at 9:41, and she walked past the 2 men in the driveway without slowing down at all. My name is Margaret Ruth Cardoza. I'm counsel to Mr. Hale as of about 4 minutes ago. You are standing on the property of a witness in a matter that is going to be a federal enforcement action by the end of this week, and I would love, genuinely, deeply, for this conversation to be in my report. There's no pending action, the man with the good face said. There will be in a hearing officer's inbox by Thursday, and you can tell whoever sent you that I said the word Thursday. She smiled at him. Go on now. They went. Inside, Ruth put a phone on the coffee table and set it to record. And Booker Hale said his name and his date of birth and 22 years at Northlight. And then he said what he saw, and it took him 11 seconds. And that 11 seconds ended a company. Mr. Hale, Ruth said, how are you so sure of the date? Because it was 2 weeks before they let me go, and I have thought about those 2 weeks every day since. That's good enough. And because Sarah Marsh's girl is sitting on my couch, Booker Hale said. And that woman used to bring me a coffee every Thursday for 9 years and never once asked me for one damn thing. And I have been sitting in this house for 8 months waiting to pay it back. Ruth Cardoza's hand shook for about a second, which for Ruth Cardoza was a great deal. At 10:15, Priya Raman printed 1 page. She could have emailed it. She thought about that for maybe 40 minutes. She could have sent it anonymously to a lawyer and stayed out of it entirely, and nobody would ever have known, and she would have been able to say she did something. She printed it. She walked down 2 flights of ringing steel stairs, and she put it in Adrienne Kessler's hand, herself. What is this? That's the termination record from May 3rd, Priya said. The real one. That's what I typed while it was happening. Adrienne looked at her. You have the record. You have the record. It's got a line missing. Priya's voice was not steady, and she kept going anyway. I typed what he said, all of it. And Mr. Brunner read it over my shoulder on the way past and told me to take 1 line out. And he said it created exposure, and I took it out. And I saved the other one, and I have thought about it every day for 67 days. Adrienne Kessler looked down. Employee states he was at Whitlock County General Hospital with his daughter from approximately 10:40 p.m. to 4 a.m. on March 3rd. States Hospital can confirm. She read it once, and what came back to her was not the sentence. It was her own body. It was the specific physical memory of the fact that she had already been turning, already had her weight on her back foot, already had the folder closed under her arm when he said the word hospital, that she had been leaving the conversation before he finished the only sentence in it that was true. He said 4 seconds, she said. Ma'am? He said it takes 4 seconds to call them. He said the numbers on a magnet on his refrigerator. Adrienne Kessler was still looking at the page. And I said I didn't need to. Yes, ma'am. That's in there too. That's the next line. It was. She went up the ringing stairs herself, and she did not knock. Dale Brunner was standing at the window with the logbook shut on the desk behind him. Dale, Adrienne, I've got legal on the... Did I fire a man in front of 11 people for a signature you wrote? He did not turn around. Adrienne, that's not the question. That's the sound a person makes instead of the question. She stayed by the door. Answer it. The rain was going sideways across the glass. He watched it for about 4 seconds. Yes, he said. She didn't move. She had known it for 2 hours, and hearing it was still a different thing entirely. The way a diagnosis is different from a symptom. Say the rest of it. I needed 92% by the 15th. The link was on order 11 days out. I swapped the part myself on the 4th off a serviceable core, and I never wrote it up because writing it up means writing down why I had to. His voice was flat and fast, like a man reading his own autopsy. The aircraft was safe. That's the part nobody's going to believe, and it's true. It was safe by the morning of the 4th. But the book had 11 hours in it where it wasn't. And the only way to close 11 hours is a signature, and I couldn't put mine on it because I'm not the one who tagged it. So you put his. So I put his. And in May, when it came out of the audit, and I asked you in the elevator, I asked you, Dale, I said, is there anything else I should know about this? You said no. You asked me if there was anything that would embarrass the company. Adrienne Kessler closed her eyes. Dale, she said, that is the same question. You just heard it in the way that let you answer it. Nobody said anything for a while. I've done one dishonest thing in 26 years, Dale Bruner said. I know. It took 11 seconds. I know that too. She opened her eyes. And you have spent 128 days doing bigger and bigger things to protect 11 seconds. And that's not a mystery, Dale. That's just what it costs. That's the whole reason people don't do the first one. He finally turned around, and there were tears in his eyes, and he was not crying. And Adrienne Kessler would remember that combination for the rest of her life. He grounded it, Bruner said. 0.004 of an inch. Nobody would have found that. Nobody would have found that in 100 years, Adrienne. I'm telling you as a professional. It's not findable. He found it because he was actually looking, and I have never in my life been able to explain to anybody why that's rare. And last night he cleared one. Yeah, same man, same reason. She looked at the shut logbook on the desk. He grounded it when it cost him everything, and he cleared it when it could have saved him. And both times he just wrote down what was actually there. Yeah, Adrienne Kessler took out her phone. Who are you calling? Bruner said. Adrienne. Wait. Let legal frame this. There's a version of this we survive. It's a records dispute. It's one entry. It's a maintenance department failure. We self-disclose in 14 days after we've built the file. I know there's a version we survive. Then, that's the problem, she said. And she called the state contract board herself, before the lawyers, before her own board, and she reported it in. He came in for his shift at 7 the next night, because he had a shift. By then there were 460 messages on a phone that had been off in a locker, and there were 2 trucks parked on the airport access road, and there was a producer who had gotten his home number somehow, and left 11 minutes of voicemail across 9 calls. At 11 o'clock, Adrienne Kessler pulled into the fuel island in a car worth more than his house. She came alone, which surprised him. There was nowhere to sit in that office, except a metal chair and an upturned 5-gallon bucket. She took the bucket. He would think about that later. Mr. Marsh. Ma'am, I have one question and then I'll go. Okay. Why did you fix it? Owen looked at her. Because there was a 6-year-old on the north end and I was standing 40 feet away. That's not an answer. That's a description. Ma'am, it's the only answer there is. He set down the clipboard. You keep looking for the other one, and there isn't one. There's no second reason. I've watched about 11 people try to find it in the last 2 days, and it isn't there. Adrienne Kessler nodded slowly. I want to tell you what I did, she said, and I want you to understand that it's worse than what you think it is. Ma'am, you don't have to. I do. I'm not doing it for you. She folded her hands. You think I looked at you and decided you weren't worth checking. That's what everybody thinks, and it's cleaner than what happened. What happened is that I read a 4-line summary in an elevator between the 2nd floor and the ground floor, and I came out that door with the decision already made, and the entire thing took about 11 seconds, and I have made 9,000 decisions in my career, and that one did not feel like one of them. The rain went across the window. It was the smallest thing I did that day, she said. That's what I want on the record, not that I did something monstrous, that I did something small. Yes, ma'am. You said it takes 4 seconds to call a hospital. It does. I was already walking. I know, Owen said. I saw. Adrienne Kessler looked at the floor of a fuel office for a while. I'd like 48 hours, she said. Before my board hears it from a reporter, I want to be the one who tells them, because I built this company out of 4 broken aircraft, and if the last thing I do is get told, then I never actually ran it. No, Owen said. She looked up. I've got no appetite for humiliating you, he said. None. That's going to disappoint a whole lot of people who've watched that video, and I can't help them. He turned the clipboard over. But I wrote 11 letters, ma'am. I called that office 3 times. I stood on your hangar floor, and I gave you a phone number off my refrigerator. Nobody gave me a sequence. Nobody let me control when anybody found out anything about me. Your board finds out the way I did, which is the same way everybody else does. She took that. She didn't argue. Fair, she said. She stood up off the bucket. Ma'am, Owen stood too. Yesterday morning you walked into that hangar and you asked who fixed that helicopter. I did. You asked the wrong question. He said it without any edge on it at all. You should have asked who grounded it in March. It's the same man, and it's the same reason, and there was only ever one thing I did in either case. What? I looked at it, Owen Marsh said. That's all. That's the whole job, and that's the whole story, and there isn't any more of it than that. Adrienne Kessler stood in the rain by her car for about 4 minutes before she got in. The enforcement action against Owen Marsh was closed on the 22nd of February. The letter ran to 1 paragraph, and it took 7 months, and it did not apologize for anything, because those letters never do. He keeps it taped inside the lid of a blue toolbox, where a business card used to be. Dale Bruner surrendered every certificate he held, permanently. He was 61 when the criminal side finished, and he did not go to prison, which some people thought was wrong. He teaches a 2-hour ethics block to apprentice mechanics twice a year at a technical college, and he tells the story accurately, which is to say he tells it with himself in it. He always says the same thing. I never told anybody to lie. Not once in 26 years. I just needed a number by Friday. Somebody always asks how long it took. He says 11 seconds, and then he stands there until the room is uncomfortable, which is the entire point of the class. The $40 million state contract was suspended, rebid, and awarded 3 years later under rules that ran to 200 pages and required maintenance records to be audited annually by somebody who does not work for the operator. Nobody at the agency remembers why that rule exists. Adrienne Kessler was removed by her own board in 6 weeks. She turned down every interview, which nobody expected and which was reported approximately once and then forgotten. She did not write a book. She never watched the video all the way through. Not once, not in 20 years. Gene Aldrich kept a fuel ticket with 9 words and a signature on the back of it in his flight bag until he retired in 2031, and then he framed it badly and hung it in a garage. Tory Vance still has the glove with 11:26 p.m. on it in marker. Kyle Deitz got his inspection authorization at 31. New hires ask him about that night constantly, and he tells them the same thing every time, which is not about the helicopter. A guy put a chip plug under a light and made me say out loud what I was looking at. Nobody had ever made me say it out loud before. Priya Raman left in September for a job that paid $11,000 less. She tells new people the same sentence every time. That's the first thing I ever did that scared me. Everything since has been easier. Booker Hale got visitors on Sundays for the rest of his life. A girl came with butterscotch candy, and he complained about the candy every single time, and he never once told her to stop bringing it. Owen Marsh did not go back to Northlight. 2 other mechanics went in with him on a shop on the field, 3 bays and a parts room, and it does gear inspections and airframe work, and it makes a living and not much more than a living. Nell Marsh is in the 2nd year of an airframe and power plant program now. She keeps a green paper notebook from the drugstore, the $2 kind, and nobody told her to. There is a photograph on the wall of that shop over the coffee maker, where everybody has to look at it. It is not the video still. It is not the news footage of Adrienne Kessler in the good coat. It is not the helicopter going up over the tree line, which ran on 400 websites and 2 magazine covers. It is somebody's bad phone picture taken sideways from behind a work stand at 11:50 at night, of a hand holding a small metal plug-up under a work light. You cannot see the man's face. You cannot see anything except a hand and a light and a piece of metal about the size of a thumb. Underneath it, in Sharpie, in a 12-year-old's handwriting, is the only caption it has ever needed. He looked. People tell this one as a revenge story. They tell it as the man who got fired and then came back and saved the day and burned it all down. They love the part where the CEO walks into her own hangar and asks who fixed her helicopter, and the whole room goes quiet, and every single person in it points at the guy she threw out. They cheer at that part. I understand why. I cheered at it too the first time somebody told it to me. But Owen Marsh grounded that aircraft in March when nobody was watching him and nobody was ever going to know. He found 0.004 of an inch that 100 other men would have walked past, and he found it because he was actually looking, and it cost him 19 years. He said where he was that night, out loud, one time, in a room full of people who had already stopped listening. He wrote 11 letters. He called 3 times. He pumped jet fuel 40 feet from the door they walked him out of for 9 weeks every night without looking at it. And when they handed him the same helicopter on the worst night of the year, he did not check whether fixing it would help him. He did not check whether it would help him at all. He checked whether it was safe, and then he wrote down what he found, and then he put the book back on the shelf where it came from and went outside and fueled a Cessna. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. He looked at it when it cost him everything, and he looked at it when it could have saved him, and both times all he did was write down what was actually there. A man like that doesn't have to shout. He doesn't have to hurry. He doesn't have to hate anybody. And Owen Marsh never did. Not one time. Not for 1 hour of it. He only has to keep looking after everybody else has stopped